All right, Australia and all of its other dominions. By 1920s, okay, by the 1920s, this is just before or just around the time Gandhi is taking over, or I shouldn't say taking over, but making more of an impact in India. It was accepted by the British government that dominions would have full legislative autonomy. And what that means is they get to make their own decisions. They get to make their own laws. And this went into effect in 1931. So right around the time of the Salt March, Great Britain, in many of its colonies, is going, okay, we don't have enough time, energy, etc., to make laws for the day-to-day stuff. I tell you what, you're wanting independence time and time and time again. You keep asking for it. You're doing these sit-ins. You're going on these hunger strikes. You're not buying our goods. Tell you what, why don't we just let you take care of the legislative piece? We'll take care of the executive piece by vetoing or approving the laws, and this will make everybody happy, right? We are still in charge, but you get to make the laws. Wouldn't that be the best thing ever? Hey, Mom, Dad, by the way, my new bedtime's this, okay? Okay. Hey, by the way, I want to do this, and I want to do this, and you're not going to make me do that. You're going to let me choose when to do this, this, and this, and they go, yes, yes, no. Life would be great, right? Almost every kid's dream to have full legislative autonomy. I make my own laws. After the statute was passed, it could no longer make ordinary laws for the dominions. So for those colonies, it couldn't make any new laws. It could only approve them or deny them. Now, the laws that were already on the books, like the monopoly of salt, stayed. Does that make sense? So it couldn't undo anything, but it could add to what was already there, or what was already on the books. So this includes, at different times, they all went through this process differently. But you look up there, it's Canada, Australia, Pakistan, India, Sierra Leone, which is now Sri Lanka, New Zealand, Newfoundland, and South Africa were all added to this list of having that legislative autonomy. Australia in 1931 had the power to choose independence. Great Britain said, hey, you guys are doing great. I want you to be totally independent on your own. Australia went, I kind of like it. We're good. I'm good. No, I don't need to be independent. I like you doing stuff for me. So maybe you guys choose that time to time in class too, right? No, just tell me what to do. I don't want to think. I'm good. Australia states that it remained a colonial dependency of the Crown. So in other words, leaders were assigned to them. They didn't get to choose their own executive branch. South Africa, when given the choice, they were like, heck yeah, I want to be independent. I don't want you hanging over me, watching my shoulder, doing anything for me. I want to make my own laws. I want to decide if my laws are good. I want the executive, judicial, and legislative powers. I'm good. I'm ready to go. The only problem is that the people who said that were mostly white settlers. The Africans really didn't get a say. They were like, no, we're kind of good, but I guess we don't get a vote in this. Others gained independence eventually. That list eventually gained independence. The last one to gain independence was 1986. You're like, yeah, that wasn't very long ago, was it? I look at it and go, I was 10 years old. You guys look at it and go, that was like 20 years before I was born. But at least it was in a lifetime close by. Anybody want to take a guess of what country that was in 1986? Take a guess. Not Australia. Not South Africa. Hawaii wasn't on that list. How about Canada?
Yeah, 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986. 1986.
China was at a civil war, right? They were in their own, and the rest of the world begins to fight World War II. But we got some things that lead us up to World War II. And it all starts with Japan. Before World War II, Japan was a nobody. Okay, they were somebody trying to be somebody, right? With the Meiji Restoration, they became industrialized and starting to grow and wanting their fair share of the world, weren't they? Were they given a fair share? No. They were treated like the evil stepchild. They succeeded in occupying almost the entire coast of China, but at a cost. And that cost were a lot of inhumane acts on the Chinese. So you say, Mr. Prince, don't we have rules that says you can't do that? Yeah, Japan ignored them, and so did the rest of the world. Okay, it wasn't ignored, but nothing was done about it. It all begins in 1931. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Joe. No, they were evil stepchild and treated poorly. 1931, Japan begins its imperialistic ways with a place called Manchuria. And if I go back, see this area up here in pink? This is the region of Manchuria, which includes what we now know as the Korean Peninsula, which wasn't really Korea at the time. It was still under Chinese rule. And then slowly over time, you notice the colors here, they go from red down to the light blue. That's kind of an order or a timeline of their imperialistic growth. So they started in the north and moved south. You with me? Makes sense? I hope so. So the nationalist China begins to challenge how Japan was treating people in Manchuria. The Communist Party, or the Red Army, was still on the run. So if you're the Nationalist Party, or the Kuomintang, and Chiang Kai-shek, what are you thinking right now? Find who? I got a war on two fronts, don't I? I got to chase down the Red Army in the west, and now I've got Japan coming in my front door and taking over Manchuria. I can't fight two wars at one time. Okay, if you're going to do it, just treat us nicely. I got other problems to worry about. Okay, I don't think they did it quite like that, but you get the idea. Japan started to bomb the capital of Shanghai to protect the Japanese residents from being attacked by protesters. Okay, so I come into your country and I'm pretty mean about it, and you protest and throw rocks, and my citizens that are there, the very few that are there, might be hurt, so I'm going to bomb everybody to protect the few, because you're threatening me because I came into your country. Correct thinking or imperialistic thinking? I'll get there.
America was at war. It had been at war, although few Americans realized it, for more than 10 years. Ever since September 18th, 1931, when Japan clawed Manchuria out of the body of China. While Hitler was still brawling in the streets of Munich, Japan had already begun weaving the pattern of aggression. It started with an incident. A Japanese train on the South Manchurian Railway had been dynamited. Promptly, Japanese battalions invaded Mukden. This was not mechanized warfare. By later standards, this war was primitive, small, trivial, the Japanese cabinet officially labeled it when China protested to the League of Nations. The League demanded Japan withdraw her troops. Japan's own vote was the sole dissenting one. Therefore, said Japan, the League's action was illegal. It wasn't unanimous. Secretary of State Stimson was concerned. We had signed the Pact of Paris, which guaranteed China's territorial integrity. We sent an observer to the League. Japan protested, finally consented. The League investigated. Under Admiral Nomura, Japanese forces attacked 15 miles from Shanghai. The same Nomura, who later as Japanese ambassador, talked peace in Washington, while his colleagues in Tokyo prepared for war. Japan marched into Shanghai with troops, fifth columnists, quislings, and propaganda, actually anticipating methods used in the conquest of Europe. Japan marched out of Shanghai at the insistence of the League.
So they made their actions legal by saying they weren't legal and everybody else saying they were illegal. Do you think the League of Nations is working correctly with the whole 100%? Everybody has to agree? No. Now you know why we have the United Nations, where it's a majority, not everybody. So the forces continued south. So here's Nanjing, and here's Beijing. Okay, Beijing, also known as Peking. They invade Nanjing, so they move from this northern area down south to Nanjing. And during a 6-week period, we have what we call the Rape of Nanjing. During those 6 years, or 6 weeks, sorry, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands were raped and murdered by the Japanese as retaliation for trying to kick them out of the country. They're trying to show their brute force. They're trying to defeat the will of the Chinese to reattack. When I searched for pictures, I could find very few that were school appropriate. We'll just leave it at that. I'm left with these two. The Chinese, the Nationalist Party, is forced to remove their capital from here back 6 weeks. We don't even know if it was tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. That's just due to mass burial graves that are unmarked and we don't know who, to massive body dumps and burning of those bodies so that the remains can be uncounted, towards other atrocities of, well, I'm not going to mention many of them, but we cannot get an accurate count of how many people were removed from Nanjing. And yet, it's not in your history books very much. You don't hear about that. I mean, we talked a little bit about the 1 million people in India, but that was over a year or two of those riots versus religion. This is 6 weeks, a month and a half, and a couple 100,000 people go missing or just vanish off the face of the earth. The international community goes, hey, that's not good. And Japan goes, well, you know, war is war. All's fair in war. And the international community goes, well, it's not quite war. But we need to help out the people of China. So guess what we do? We send a bunch of food and weapons. I wonder if those weapons will be used solely for the sole purpose of freeing themselves from Japan. Or might they be used in the Civil War, which allows the Communist Party and the Red Army to succeed? What ifs that we'll never know. China could be democratic or it could not be. Did the American weapons help? I can't say for sure. But either way, it was ineffective against Japan. Japan still continues to take over more and more and more land by force and fear. And by the beginning of World War II, here's all the land that they can control. By 1940, Japan begins to occupy Vietnam with an agreement. They sign a pact with Nazi Germany and fascist Italy, and they become the three-power pact, creating the Axis powers prior to World War II. Now, I say World War II, and I mean the American part of World War II. World War II has already begun in 1940. Hitler has taken over the majority of Europe with very little opposition, if you will. There's been some resistance, but most countries just didn't have the military power to defeat Germany and keep them out of their country. Along with Italy helping them out, Europe's defenseless. The only defense they have is Great Britain because they're an island and Germany doesn't have a navy. Kind of hard to get troops there without a navy. And when Great Britain has such a great navy, even if you try and send a few ships, you're not going to ever make it. Great Britain and the United States, when they find out that Japan has joined in with Italy and Germany, they say, we can't stop you without getting into a war, and we're not going to get into a war over beliefs, so we're going to try and stop you economically and militarily and industrially. And the one way to do that is to take away the one thing you cannot do on your own and you need us for it, and that's oil. The Middle East was not an oil-producing area at the time. Most of the oil and coal came from America and Great Britain. How would you, if you were Japan, how would you respond to an oil boycott? You need it for your planes, your trains, your ships. How do you respond to that? They just took away the blood of your military and industry. Literally. It's the thing that makes it run. Do you see where this is going? Japan felt like they were the victims of Western imperialism. Not in the idea that they were being taken over by the Western world, but they weren't treated as equals. They felt like they were not treated equally. You saw that in the Meiji Restoration, didn't you? Always the evil stepchild. Not treated, not given a fair shake in the world. We've done everything. We went from an old school governmental system to an industrial nation in 30 years, and we're just like you, and you treat us like we're nobody. I dress like you. I act like you. I do everything like you, and yet you treat me and you tell me I'm doing things wrong? Please. I tried to become industrial, but you always cut me off. You felt that I was a small country and I couldn't compete, but yet my land is bigger than, almost the same size as Great Britain's. Yet you treat them the same. I'm just a small island like them. Why can't I be treated the same? And now you're going to go and you're going to treat me with racial discrimination? You're going to treat me because I'm not white? You're going to treat me like the Africans and the Indians? Please. And now you go and take away my oil? Well, that's it. That's it. I'm done. I've had enough. I need to defend my honor. I need to defend my pride. And I need to defend my emperor. Game on. You've poked the sleeping bear long enough. You've kicked dirt in my face. I hope you're ready. Because we took their oil, they stretched further and further into Indonesia where there was oil, into Vietnam, into the Philippines where they could get their oil. We took away their oil and woke up a sleeping bear that's hungry, mean, and ornery. After kicking dirt in its face, calling him racially negative words. This look familiar? I love this picture. What does it seem like? Kind of that other picture of Great Britain where they had their claws or their tentacles in all the other places around the world. Same thing here. Japan's just spreading its wings. Go ahead, Joe. Say like octopus. Yeah. All right. And that's where we're going. Japanese military. Males between the ages of 17 to 40 were drafted. If you quick do the math, you're like, wait a minute, that's like every able-bodied male. So what does that do to the workforce? Wait, there is no male workforce, so it must all become females and kids, and the old doing all the work on the main or on the island, right? It was a dishonor to go to war. If you dishonor your family, you commit harikiri, right? Or suicide by the knife. You know what I'm talking about? Okay? You sacrifice yourself with the knife, and you know the old samurai tradition. If you disgrace yourself as a samurai, if you don't live up to the honor, you're expected to commit suicide. You dishonor your family, you commit suicide. You regain that honor by doing the honorable thing and sacrificing yourself. Joe. Yeah, similar to seppuku. They received a set of bar each arm, just 1,000 stitches, supposed to bring them back home and safe. They were honored and obliged to fight. This is great. I get to defend my honor of my country and sacrifice my life so that we can regain some status in the world that we never had and were entitled to. They took our oil, they kicked dirt in our face, called us names, and never treated us as equal. Time to make a statement. So they launched the first thing and only thing you do, the smartest thing you can do, if you go up against a foe, we'll call it, we show up to a gunfight with a knife. The only way to win that fight is to disarm your opponent before they can shoot you, right? And then when you disarm them, they have no weapon, but yet you have your knife. That's the smartest thing you can do in a fight when somebody has a superior weaponry to you. Disarm them. Well, we've got to get rid of the West. Great Britain's too far away, but the United States is pretty close. First, I need to disarm them. Easiest place to disarm them? Get rid of their Navy. It's really hard to fly your planes all the way over and bomb me. It's easy to take a ship over. Get rid of the ships, they can't attack me. Get rid of all their ships. I have ships, they don't. Smart play, right? An intelligent game plan, or battle plan, if you will. They carefully planned, executed to wipe out battleships in the American naval fleet. So they launched an attack on Pearl Harbor. Most of the Pacific Fleet and all the battleships are located in Pearl Harbor. What was there? What did they use? They used 6 aircraft carriers, battleships, cruisers, light cruisers, 9 destroyers, 3 fleets of submarines. The carriers had 423 planes, and accompanying the fleet were 8 tankers for refueling. Did they come prepared? Yeah. Now the United States had a little bit little superior because they had like kind of what you would call the home field advantage and more planes and more. I don't know if they had more. And I think they had a few more ships. They had the 20 fleet submarines and 5 two-man midget submarines. Those two-man midget submarines were used to gather any intelligence and sink any vessels that might flee Pearl Harbor during the attack. So I've got some videos, and I'll put them on the web version of it. So if you're more interested in learning more about it, you can watch those clips. I'm going to skip them and give you the abbreviated version. Deal? Okay. So when I go to edit this and put it on Schoology, I will add those clips in there.
In a tragic case of bad timing, the scheduled American B-17s and the U.S. aircraft from the Enterprise arrive Pearl Harbor at the same time and are caught between enemy and friendly fire. 8:05 a.m. Machine guns on battleship Nevada open fire on torpedo planes. Repair ship Vestal, moored next to Arizona, opens fire. Battleship California receives torpedo portside at frame 1110. High-level bombers begin the run on Battleship Row. One of the easiest targets is the defenseless Oklahoma. On board, the only thing Leon Kolb was expecting is sabotage.
When the first torpedoes hit my ship on December the 7th, I thought, that's what's happened. After the second or third explosion, the officer of the deck came on our communication system and said, all hands man your battle stations. The enemy's attacking. And it went through my mind, who's the enemy?
Amidst the frenzy, American soldiers are still unsure who exactly is attacking them.
One of the fellows said, the whole enemy fleet's right off of Diamond Head. I had to go outside and look for myself because I counted 5 and 6 more explosions, and I thought, what's hitting us?
We did not realize it was Japanese airplanes until I saw what they call the meatball, their insignia. So I stood out there for a while and watched the raid. Believe me, those boys could fly the planes. They come in on their torpedo run or their bombing run and turn those things up on its tail and come back to straight. So they were darn good pilots.
The first wave of the Japanese attack on the island of Oahu is a stunning victory for the enemy. America's Pacific Fleet feels the sting of newly perfected torpedoes designed specifically for the shallow waters of Pearl Harbor. Violent explosions rock light cruisers, mine layers, and battleships like the Oklahoma. But this is only the beginning. The second wave of the Japanese attack is about to begin. 8:15 a.m., KGMB interrupts regular programming for a second call, ordering all military personnel to report for duty, including doctors and nurses.
I was stationed at Triple General Hospital. I was assigned to the maternity ward. And of course, we had a lot of enlisted men with their families there. But coming from Pennsylvania, of course, I hadn't seen all this tropical paradise like that was. The amount of military that was there was really overwhelming. But, you know, we were completely removed from any thought of any war. I don't think most of us even realized there was a crisis there. I was in bed, sound asleep. Two of our night nurses tried to get us all awake, and we thought they were joking. We thought, oh, this is, come on now, this is, you're kidding. Can't be.
We had 3 casualties. 2 pilots, one attempted to take off in the bravest act I've ever seen, while under fire, stepping into his plane, was strafed and fell over like a movie scene. And another pilot did get his plane into the air. He was shot down.
At 8:26 a.m., the Honolulu Fire Department responds to a call from Hickam Field. Of the brave unarmed men who are trying to save lives, 3 firemen are killed and 6 are wounded.
We didn't have guns up to that time. They opened the armament shack, and there was no loose ammunition for the rifles. So we took bandoliers and machine gun shells. We were laden down with arms.
8:50 a.m., the second wave of Japanese aircraft come in from the north. Their plan of attack is to once again strike military bases all across the island with fighters, horizontal bombers, and dive bombers.
3 of us were ascending the stairs from our barracks up to the hospital, which was up on a knoll. We could look over to the left and see Pearl Harbor and tremendous explosions, and the plane came flying very, very low over us. And it was a Japanese pilot, and he looked after, he smiled to us, and he waved to us. And we all 3 waved back, stood there and waved back.
8:54 a.m., the second attack run begins. 78 dive bombers hit ships in Pearl Harbor. 54 high-level bombers hit naval air stations. 36 fighters circle over the harbor to maintain air control.
When we arrived on duty, they were bringing them in. The ambulances were lined up outside with patients from all over, you know. Some of them were a few civilians that they'd picked up off the streets, but most of them were Hickam Field. I was assigned to 3 beds, and my first 3 patients that came in expired without being able to do anything for them.
The first wave of the Japanese attack caused immediate confusion. But now, the second wave creates total chaos. Americans fire at anything in the sky. Tragically, some of the planes shot down were the unarmed United States B-17s from the mainland and the planes sent by the U.S. carriers.
But let's talk about what happens and why it happens real quick, okay? Abbreviated version, how do you disarm the American fleet? The first thing you do is you show up at the perfect time. They showed up at 7:55 a.m. on a Sunday morning for 2 reasons. The first reason is that is when the resupplying cargo planes are coming from California. So this is old school radar, right? The blip, 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 blip. It goes around and it's just a little green light, right? So if you take a whole bunch of fighter planes and you pack them in very closely into a tight formation, it's one blip, 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 and you come in from the same direction that the cargo plane comes in at 8 o'clock in the morning. What does the radar guy see? Oh, here comes the resupply ship. Beep, beep, beep. Oh, there's a second one. Oh, well, I guess they're sending extra cargo ships, right? I can talk to the cargo guy. I know he's on his way. Oh, there's an extra blip. I wonder, oh, there must have been just an extra. Wait a minute, now I can see them. That's not a cargo plane. That's a whole bunch of other smaller aircraft. Is there a training? No, it's Sunday. There are no training runs. It's everybody's like at church or they're kind of the day off. What the heck? Oh, no. Wait a minute. Shoot, it's almost too late. So one, you catch them off guard. And you time it perfectly so that what's on the radar seems normal. So we've deceived the Americans to begin with, and we've gotten in close by deceiving their radar. The second piece of that is you attack the entrance to Pearl Harbor first. Why do you attack the entrance and exit of Pearl Harbor? We want to keep everybody in, and we don't want anybody to get out. Our ships are out. If they get out, they can attack our ships. So they attack the first ships closest to the exit. If you sink that ship, you have to unsink it to get anybody out of the harbor. Smart, right? Keep everybody in, nobody gets out. The second thing they did was attack Hickam Air Force Base. Almost all the airplanes were there. Bomb all the planes on the airstrip, and what happens? They can't get into the air. Notice that during the first and second wave, they were attacking all the other Air Force runways all around the island of Oahu. Ground all the planes. Destroy the airstrip so they can't even take off. There's too many holes in the airstrip. Now they can't attack you in the air. They can't get out. There's no way to defend themselves. The second wave comes in and literally is just there to lay waste to anything that's still floating or running around. Now, there were some really cool technological things that they had to design for here. Pearl Harbor is fairly shallow. Torpedoes run deep and then come up. They actually had to recreate fins on their torpedoes so that when they dropped the bombs, they hit the water and then skimmed back up so they wouldn't hit into the muck and stay there. They've been planning this for a very long time, and we're very smart about it. They did everything right except for two things.
At 7:55 a.m. on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, the Japanese begin their strategic surprise attack on Pearl Harbor and the island of Oahu. Every military target is being hit. In defense, Americans put up whatever resistance possible, but it is no match for the onslaught. 8:08 a.m. Local radio station KGNB interrupts music to call all military personnel to duty. High-level Japanese bombers are unleashing armor-piercing delayed-action bombs from 10,000 feet. One scores a direct hit on the battleship Arizona. The mighty warship sinks in less than 9 minutes.
I looked up and I saw the high-altitude bombers come up. I did see the Arizona blow up, and the smoke and flames must have gone 500-600 feet in the air. I mean, it was awesome. Absolutely awesome. Somebody asked me if I was scared. I said, you darn right I was scared. You know, who wouldn't be?
2 ship lengths away, the USS Oklahoma is an easy target.
I thought, this is going to be the closest I'll ever come to death without losing my life. I wanted to go back down to my locker and take the things out I had, seeing I was going to have to leave the ship. One of them was an engagement ring, and I just bought for my wife. It was a full carat, but something told me to save my life.
The Oklahoma is hit by 10 torpedoes. Explosions have ripped holes throughout the ship's armor. And because portholes and watertight hatches had been left open overnight, seawater is surging into the ship.
There's no portholes in there so you can look out and see what's going on, but you sense that the ship's going way out of balance. By that time, others had started going over the side, so I assumed they'd heard the word to abandon ship. And I was one of the first 2 or 3 to swim to an officer's boat. Dive bombers come over. I actually followed the plane in until it dropped the bomb on the Pennsylvania, which was in the dry dock.
8:14 a.m. The Oklahoma has capsized. Turret gunner Leon Kolb has barely escaped with his life, but hundreds of men trapped inside the Oklahoma's hull can be heard pounding against the steel. High above the blazing wreckage, 19-year-old Japanese airman Taisuke Maruyama witnesses the destruction of the bomb he dropped.
The bomb my plane dropped hit the battleship Oklahoma. Since it was my first mission, I was happy that my bomb did hit the Oklahoma and we won the battle.
Desperate attempts to free the men trapped inside the overturned Oklahoma will continue on into the night.
I'll put these videos up, but you can see here's what we call Battleship Row. This is land right here down at the bottom. So they were lined up one after another. Boy, you could make a bad shot and still hit something. You can see just the mass destruction that they caused. The attack damaged or destroyed 12 American warships, destroyed 188 aircraft, and killed over 2,400 people and 68 civilians. Most of those servicemen were on the USS Arizona. USS Arizona was one of those battleships on Battleship Row that was hit in the second wave. So after the first wave, everybody was called to their stations. The entire ship was almost fully crewed. And they were able to sink it with one really good shot, and trapping over 1,000 servicemen inside the ship. The rest were destroyed on deck. Very few survived. And we still have the ship today in Pearl Harbor. You can still go visit it today and see the battleship underneath. Most all the other battleships, and I'll talk about this in just a second, were salvaged or reused or repaired somehow, some way. But the Arizona still sits here with its servicemen still inside. This is the fuel and the oil that's still today, and I was there 4 years ago, you can still see the oil seeping out from it. When you go, and I hope you do, I hope you find some time to go, it's one of those sites that I think, my opinion, everybody should go and visit. There were 23 sets of brothers who died there on the USS Arizona. The upper part, if I go back real quick, this upper part that's kind of leaning out of the water, they basically cut that off and reused it for another battleship or to repair other ones. The hull, the turrets, and 1,000 plus crewmen are still in there. When I was there a day after a funeral. And one of the crewmen who survived, who was assigned to the Arizona, who did survive, passing away of old age, they had a funeral service, and then some Navy SEALs, commandos, the submarine guy, or the scuba guys, put his remains inside with his crewmates, his friends, his brothers. But I said there were two things the Japanese didn't do, didn't I? The first thing they did was they forgot to destroy the machine shops. They forgot to destroy the oil tank farms. And they didn't get the submarines. First mistake number one. You didn't destroy our ability to fix things. And you didn't destroy the oil, the lifeblood of our military. So now we have the oil and the ability to repair everything. Everything was repaired within a year. That could be repaired or salvaged. Joe. that I guess could be the third thing too. Only the Arizona, the Oklahoma, and the Utah battleships were the only ones that we could not salvage or repair. So after all of that, 3 battleships was the only thing we lost, and time. But time is irrelevant in a situation like this. So really, after all that, we only really lost 3 battleships, and well, after all that, maybe that's not such a bad loss. And maybe they woke up the sleeping giant. So within 1 year, we were able to do that. Now, I said there were 2 things, right? The second thing that they didn't do was they didn't destroy our aircraft carriers. Every single one of the aircraft carriers survived. Why? They weren't in Pearl Harbor like they were supposed to be. They had, I wouldn't call it an impromptu because it was planned, but it wasn't a well-known plan. But a few days earlier, they sent the aircraft carriers out on training when they weren't generally supposed to. So, did we get lucky? Real lucky. Had we had those aircraft carriers been in the harbor, it could have been a lot worse. Because on those aircraft carriers were a lot of planes and a lot of machine shops and a lot of ability to fix all of those things within a year. And building an entire battleship takes more than a year. I'm sorry, an aircraft carrier takes more than a year. So that was mistake number 2. They didn't find them.